Hello and welcome to the Best Kept Secrets of Greene County, New York podcast, where we're letting the Catskills out of the bag. I am Thomas Boomhower, Economic Development Specialist for Greene County, and joining me, as always, is my wonderful co-host, Mark Gustavson, who leads our creative team for the Buy in Greene and Invest Greene programs.
Hey, Thomas.
What's going on, Mark? Today we have the privilege of sitting on location in High Rock Home here on Main Street in Catskill, New York, and talking with owners Joe Snaido and Michael Moy. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to sit with us.
It's our pleasure.
Yeah, it's great to have you guys.
So, Best Kept Secrets of Greene County, New York is all about pointing out the stuff that people may overlook. And then also we try to get to something else, maybe some little known facts or things like that as well. But we've got a lot of great businesses in all of the different communities that we have here. And some of the coolest things that we find out is when we get a chance to talk to proprietors is the unique origin stories that they have, what drew them here in the first place, and what has made them want to make their home in Greene County, do business here, and become part of the business community. So if you guys could just give us a little background of where you were before you started coming up to Greene County.
Well, that's where I think it makes sense for Joe to speak first, because he's kind of the reason we're here.
All right, then. It's all on you.
I know. Well, I mean, we were living in Manhattan and then Jersey City, but I think the origin for me has been when I was a kid, I would come up here every summer, probably from the time that I was born. And I just remember coming to Palinville. I don't know if people, you know about the town. Probably you do know about the town, yes. Palinville. And it was just like a charming place to be with the water holes and the swinging bridges and the Circle W. And,
absolutely.
You know, for ice cream and things like that. So I think that's what originally got us up here.
His grandmother had a house.
Yeah, my grandmother had a house. And it was, you know, a really tiny house. And we just would all, you know, squeeze into this house. But we just had a great time.
So you know the Circle W in Palinville, right? You know what the W stands for?
No.
Okay, Warden. The Warden family, I have those aunts and uncles that aren't really related to you, but it's Uncle Pete and Aunt Dot were the Wardens, and they had the first television set in the area. My parents used to go up there to watch TV, and then they would come down to my parents' house in Jefferson Heights to play cards. But that's the Wardens were the people that were part of the Circle W.
I thought it was always like a brand at a ranch or something like that, the Circle W.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, so that was what originally got me up here. Mm-hmm. And then I think it was the time my father died.
Well, first your grandmother passed, and then your father passed a year later.
Yeah, and then at that point, we had to settle that estate. And first we were thinking about buying that for my brothers and sisters and just building on that piece of property. And we realized that it was actually the most expensive thing was building the house. Mm-hmm. And the house that was on there was not a house we would want. So if we're going to build, we decided to maybe look around a little bit. So then we started looking at up on the mountaintop around Hunter and Wyndham, and we ended up finding beautiful.
Well, it was funny. When we were being shown properties, oftentimes it was a house looking out at a distant view. And I said to Joe, yeah, one of the things that I loved about his family's history up here was I would look at the pictures and I see the simplicity in them and creeks and everything. And I said, I think I'd rather be in the view than looking at the view.
Sure.
So maybe we could look at some properties like that. And we found one that was in the window that had been there for so long that, how they turned blue at a certain point, the photograph. So we asked to see that property.
Yeah, and it was on Conifer Lake. It was a man-made lake in the town of Jewett. Mm-hmm. And, and that's what got us started. So we bought that piece of property.
And we were still living in Manhattan at the time.
Yeah, and we were thinking since we were renting there, then we'll build upstate. And I mean, not to get into too elaborate a story in regard to that, we ended up at first buying the property and then thinking it was going to take us a while to build on it. And then what happened is 9/11 came along. And then I'm like, my office window got broken, everything else. I'm like, I could have been killed that day. Right. And then we're like, we begin to realize, what are you waiting for? And it was the what are you waiting for that got us to build.
Coincidentally, at the same time, we had given up on finding a place in the city, only to open the paper one day where it said, why look in Manhattan when you can have this in Jersey City? And we looked at each other and said, do you think that's worth looking at? So we jumped on the PATH train. We were there in 5 minutes. And before we knew it, we were making an offer on an old sugar warehouse on the waterfront, facing the Statue of Liberty. Mm-hmm. So we had bought this property up here thinking, we can't get anything in Manhattan, so we'll build upstate.
Mhm.
And then all of a sudden we find a place that we wanted to buy. So now we had two places. We had the place in Jersey City and this piece of property. And then 9/11 happened.
Mhm. So what were you doing on 9/11? Everybody's got a 9/11 story, you know? So,
Well, I mean, I was in my office and
On Church Street.
okay.
yeah, on Church Street, which was only like a block and a half away. And when the first plane hit, I didn't see when it did it, but I just, immediately looked out. And I just remember looking out for a while, and you'd see all the people on the street, and then the second plane hit, but the second plane, it broke the window of my office. That's why I really felt like I was like personally in danger kind of.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Absolutely.
He said he never jumped out of his office so fast.
Yeah.
So what did you do when you were working in Manhattan? What was your gig?
I was when I retired, I was the CIO of Standard & Poor's.
Chief Information Officer for Snaido. So just this little company that nobody knows much about. Yeah, that's
But on 9/11, I was working for Moody's as managing director of application development.
Okay, gotcha.
Head of technology.
Gotcha.
Too.
Okay.
And then I was uptown on 20th and 5th Avenue in a small firm. I was a partner with two other partners for a design firm that designed for the cosmetic and fragrance industry.
Oh, fantastic.
So I could literally look down 5th Avenue kind of to where Joe was,
Yeah.
I unfortunately had not the best receptionist who never got messages correct. So the last thing I heard was that Joe was in a bomb shelter. He had walked down to the basement with some of his staff and then evacuated the building.
Mm-hmm.
But that was the last thing I heard. And I remember that day I was talking to his sister, very upset because I couldn't get a hold of him.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden I heard this strange sound from the street because my office faced 5th Avenue. And so I walked I had these big windows. I opened the window and it was it's this strange sound of people gasping, a collective gasp.
Mm-hmm.
It was the strangest sound I'd ever heard. I can't even describe it, but it was the sound of everybody gasping at the same time as the building fell in slow motion. And I almost fell out the window when I saw it happen. And all of a sudden I felt somebody grab me, and it was Joe.
Oh my God!
Wow.
He had walked all the way uptown to 20th Street from downtown.
So I could save him.
Yeah, there you go.
The happy part of it is we just decided, a lot of people said, oh, I always dreamed of having this, or I always dreamed of doing this. And we said, well, let's put a price on our dream to build a house up in the Catskills.
Right.
And that's how we started our first house.
So I've had the privilege of coming to see your place at High Rock, which is just absolutely amazing. And I'm envied by many friends. But you built a place at High Rock before you came and renovated this space.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, the house in Jewett, we're on about 2.5 acres.
Yeah.
On this private lake in this little gated community. And you can still hear every one of your neighbors.
Yeah.
And people always joke up here in the country, you want enough land where you can't see your neighbors, but they can hear you if you are in need of help.
Or if you get attacked by a bear, right?
and so I had said to Joe, I would have built the house differently if I had a do-over, which we always joke about me wanting a do-over. Because our main bedroom was 3 stories up and there were a lot of stairs. And I joked, if this is truly our forever home, I need to be able to wheel myself around, in my old age. So Joe kind of took that to heart and was looking on the internet all the time at different properties.
Yeah. Well, at first I was looking for like 30 acres. And probably no more than that, but more than 2. So I wanted a bigger piece of property. And we looked at some on the other side of the river, and we
with all the building restrictions on that.
Yeah, and then we're like finding either building restrictions or so many easements where everybody could cut across your property. So I'm like, well, how private is that if 25 different homes have rights to like start crisscrossing across your property? So I found this one property in East Durham. And I'm showing it to Mike. I'm like, look, it's got a stone bridge. Look, it's got a waterfall. Look, it's on Catskill Creek. He goes, no way. He goes, this has got to have a toxic waste dump on it or something.
You know how they do with listings. They'll show a stone bridge, but it's on the property down the street, and they'll show a creek, but it doesn't actually run along your property. Right. So I was pretty skeptical.
But this one really did. It
had all that.
Yeah.
And but the thing is, it was really hard to get to. It had, our entranceway for the first 50 feet right now is, it's 50 feet wide for the first 500 feet, and then it gets more expansive once you get onto the property.
I say it's shaped like a T-bone steak.
Right.
Yeah, and so we couldn't even hardly get in. We had a Jeep, and the Jeep got stuck in the driveway, so we couldn't even get into this property. And then we were having trouble seeing things because it was just so incredibly overgrown. So it was like going, and we felt like it was the land that time forgot.
Gotcha.
We went into this property, and we're like, we're kind of bushwhacking our way to look at it, and to get to the creek. And then, once we got there, we said, and we found like the bridge, and we found some paths, and then we like, oh my God, this is incredible. But it's just amazing that nobody's ever found this thing,
Well, because the building site's about 3/4 of a mile from the entrance.
Absolutely, yeah.
And
And there was no road.
And plus, it's daunting to have to build a 3/4 mile driveway.
Right.
The guy
Right.
that actually
And
pulled our Jeep out of the mud turned out to be the son-in-law of a contractor, an excavator, who ended up doing our road. Coincidentally, yeah.
That's it. That's neat.
It was kind of scary in a way. And then the guy wanted, a decent amount of money for it, but it had already been off the peak of the market because it was 2009 when this happened. So it was after the financial crisis, and we felt like we were kind of lowballing it a little bit, like making it a little bit lower. But then he scared me when he effectively accepted our offer with the small, with a reasonable counter. And then all of a sudden he went, oh my gosh, now we got to do this. And that's how we ended up buying the property. And then we started on this path of, how to build it,
And besides the beauty of the property, what we liked was the history of the property. I mean, it's part of a land patent that used to go all the way up to Albany,
Wow.
which is mind-boggling to think that one person ever owned that much property. No one had ever really built on it. There had been a little log cabin that had fallen down that someone used as like a little summer house. And the person that recently in modern times owned it was Haskins.
Yeah, this guy house.
And he's the same person that donated the Durham Center Museum.
Gotcha.
building,
Yeah.
that little red schoolhouse.
Right. That's it.
So that used to be part of the whole piece of property. But we love the fact that the Catskill Railway had run across the property for about, what would you say, about 3/4 of a mile?
Across our property, then it crosses over the creek onto another piece of property. But that railroad was one of the first in the United States. It was like 1838.
Wow.
When they had built
Very
that.
primitive wood tracks with metal caps.
On wood tracks.
Wow.
Yeah, so, and that's why our property is called High Rock, is because the High Rock train disaster was there.
Wow.
And that
was 1840?
Yeah, around 1840.
Okay. And so what was the High Rock train disaster?
It was this small little locomotive that
The bridge.
was crossing over the bridge, and I guess at that point in time they had put wooden struts into the ground, and because the creek had been running fast that year, it destabilized the base of that bridge. It's stoned up, larger part of it is stone, but the wood part got destabilized, and then the engine ended up going into the creek.
Ouch.
So where we ended up building overlooks remnants of that stone trestle.
Okay.
And the stone trestle bridge also is what is on our property, and a waterfall goes underneath it.
Neat.
But when you walk, you can see where they drilled to put dynamite in to cleave the stone.
Yeah.
So those are always kind of neat little things to
Oh, yeah.
find.
That's
It's
it.
interesting they have that history.
Sure. That's it.
But yeah, very primitive train. And it appears in a Thomas Cole painting in the background.
Oh, very cool.
The Conagahari Catskill Railway, which was never completed.
Yeah. So it never really got to Conagahari.
I'm not sure which
No, it didn't.
place it didn't get to.
I think it made its way up to Cooksburg.
Okay.
And then, so it was going back and forth between Cooksburg and Catskill.
So it did make it to Catskill?
Yeah, and it was trying to compete with the Erie Canal.
That's what we built it.
Because there used to be wagon trains that would go across down, I guess, probably what's now Route 145. And so in the Schoharie Turnpike and
Right.
stuff like that.
The old Schoharie Turnpike.
Yeah.
Yep. That's so you built this magnificent place. You've got
By accident.
kind of, okay, but you're gluttons for punishment because as soon as that place was done, you had to find another property to renovate. Was that?
No, well, I mean, originally I just wanted to plop something simple onto that property, but I went to a friend who's an architect for advice because I love the idea of modular, like, oh, they'll just plop it down, they'll build it inside and plop it down. He would have none of that. So Joe and I went to talk to him, and we went to the conference room, and there was a full-blown presentation on what they want to do for us.
Wow.
Based on the stone trestle that the site overlooked, they wanted to build a house based on the idea of a bridge. So the house is built on a series of trestles that eventually kind of comes up off the ground. So it's a high house on high rock. Yeah.
There you go. There you go.
We ended up purchasing this building.
When you retired.
Yeah, it was kind of, I was sitting there thinking about, maybe we need to do other things because I was retiring.
It wasn't enough that we got horses and pastures and bought chickens when he retired.
You've got to have something to do, yeah.
Well, I also think we didn't mind working with contractors and doing things and feeling like we're making progress on.
Sure.
We were originally looking at other buildings down on this street, and we actually we were thinking about Hudson too, but we looked at Hudson and I would think like, well, how do you make the economics work? Because the buildings, Hudson was very well explored, right? So, and as a result of that, those buildings were very, very expensive, so it's hard to think about how you'd make money.
And I
one of those buildings.
And I liked Catskill too, because I used to develop brands for a living. And as a brand, I kept thinking Catskill, on the Catskill, in the Catskills, right off exit 21. I thought Catskill had a lot of potential.
Yeah.
To me, it just made sense from a brand standpoint, from a locale standpoint. So that's why we thought maybe it'd be kind of nice to just have like a little toehold in Catskill and see where it takes us.
Well, I was born in Catskill. Okay, so I spent my entire life whenever I travel of saying Catskill, not the Catskills. Okay, so it's the town of Catskill, not the Catskill Mountains, although we have the beautiful Great Northern Catskill
So we
Mountains.
realized in the internet age, actually having a business in the Catskills is kind of advantageous.
Oh, yeah.
When people do a search on Catskill, then you end up popping up, right?
You do.
Yeah, even if they're saying Catskill stores, right?
And just one look at Main Street and you see the charming buildings and everything. We just saw the potential.
Well, you saw something that, I mean, you definitely had a vision because this was an eyesore, okay? When you bought this place, before you bought this place, it was a Napa Auto Parts store, and it was in and out of business, and it was just this god-awful looking boarded up front.
With very blue.
Very blue.
Yeah, I always said it looked like one of those cartoons, Duck Season and Rabbit Season. There were so many signs on the front.
Oh, yeah, that was
facade.
it. Yeah. But you saw the roof. That's what really got your...
Well, originally, we actually made an offer on a building down the street. Full ask, very traditional. In fact, I think way back it had been a brothel.
Okay.
But it was a storefront with, apartments above, residential above. It scared me a bit because when you looked in the walls, there were rough-hewn timbers that looked not that far removed from a tree.
Right.
But when that fell through, our real estate broker said, there's this property that's been sitting on the market for years. He says, I just have this feeling that you guys could do something with it. So that's how we ended up looking at this property.
Yeah, and the roof was the most enticing feature, but it was also the most scary feature because that roof was like very unstable the way it was. And not so much because it has steel beams, which is very stable, but it had a lot of the wood beams had been rotting and there had been fires here. And so it needed the most amount of work. And when we did our renovation, it was probably the most expensive thing to do was to fix this roof. But the roof is truly unique, right?
It is. And this is an audio medium, so for our listeners, we have to describe the fact that this building has what's called a sawtooth roof.
Yes.
Is that it? And so it was designed in such a way that the roof has ridges like the teeth on saws, and the vertical section of each of those sections is a glass to let light in, so that you get natural illumination in a workshop environment.
Right. Yeah. So we have 5 of those, each with 20 windows. So it's a total of 100 windows in the ceiling. Yeah. So from a certain angle, when you look, it looks like the whole ceiling is glass. What's funny about this building is it's not really a building. We're essentially an alleyway between 2 buildings. That had been, the building adjacent to us had been a carriage house or something like that, or stables. And this was an alleyway with the blacksmith shop.
Gotcha.
And when automobiles were invented, that became Lacey Ford.
Okay.
And they needed a garage to work on stuff, so they embedded those steel beams into the building they owned. The Village of Catskill building's next door.
Mhm.
They didn't own that, so they just built brick pillars to hold up the other end of the
beams.
beams,
Yeah.
and then built the roof on top. So it's kind of a building that's not even a building.
Well, that's
Yeah.
amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah, built in 1914, which is
Yeah.
quite, yeah.
So it's 110 years old.
Yeah.
What was nice is when we finished the renovation, we really still didn't have a clear idea what we were going to do with the building.
Mhm.
You know, Catskill at that point there wasn't a lot of traffic in Catskill.
No.
But one of the things I had done before I was in the design firm I was in, I was at a cosmetic firm, and they would always make me run their special events.
Mhm.
And I was just looking at the space one day, and I thought, this open space with no columns at all,
Mhm.
2,500 square feet plus the backyard
Right.
of equal size.
Mhm.
I thought this would make a great event space. So
And you've
that's
had some
how Joe's
great
brought-
events here. I mean, I've been fortunate enough to attend a bunch of them, not the least of which are some spectacular parties that you guys have thrown. Roaring 20s party for when 2020 happened, and then
Yeah, that was the last party for a lot of people pre-pandemic.
yeah, it was pre-pandemic. That was in January of 2020. It was fantastic, and then of course nobody can forget Joe's 60th birthday party with the 60s theme.
Yeah.
My wife in her go-go boots.
Yes.
Me trying to channel my inner Don Draper. Yeah.
Yeah, we
yes.
always love that you guys fully embrace the theme of the evening.
People were very sad when we were all of a sudden making another business because they realized that there wouldn't necessarily be these wild parties.
Yeah, there was someone that was begging me. We had a couple of quinceañeras, which were fun.
Mhm.
And she said, "Can you move all your merchandise out so I could have my daughter's quinceañera?" And I just said, there's a lot of glassware in here now.
Yeah, yeah.
And so many people got married here, so it was nice to, when that business was kind of nice that way.
Sure.
Of course, it was COVID that shut down the event business for us. And that's what got us thinking, well, do we want to continue doing it? Because if there was a time to rethink whether we wanted to change gears, that was the time to do it during the COVID year, which shut down everything,
But then at the same time in Catskill City, it opened. The Catskill Chocolate Company opened.
Yep.
Catskill Market opened.
When we started noticing a lot more traffic up and down the street, we're like, okay,
Okay,
this is an opportunity.
There's a retail play here.
Now Mahala had already been there.
Mhm.
And then right after we decided to make this High Rock home, after, using the same name as our property as inspiration, around the same time Peyton's opened at Catskill Collectibles.
Yep.
So a lot.
We saw the street
New
coming
stores.
alive at that point, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm purposely plugging all those stores because I shop in all those stores.
It's a great business community.
Yeah.
It's an absolutely wonderful business community. But
Yeah.
when I was a little boy, my mother was a dental hygienist for 40 years. So she cleaned everybody's teeth in the county, and that's one of the reasons I left when I was 18 years old, because I couldn't get away with anything. Okay. But she worked in an office that's now the main office for the Bank of Greene County, the executive offices for the Bank of Greene County. And all along through here, you had Sherman's Green Grocer and Winans Men's Shop and, oh gosh, the DiStefano brothers had what's now Village Pizza, was DiStefano's Meat Market, and then the barbershop was right
Wasn't
next
there
to it.
also Newberry's?
JJ Newberry's was where the county building is now.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, so we used to go there to get records because every week there would be new 45s.
That's what I remember when I was a kid coming up here. I remember
Yep. That's where JJ.
That's the thing kids would remember.
Sure. Oh yeah, the whole toy department downstairs.
Toy department, yeah, I remember it.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
That was it.
But, besides those new businesses, there were established businesses like Swamp Angel Antiques and Sister Salvage.
Yep.
And I think I mentioned Mahalo already. So, and places like Village Pizza and little places to eat. It just seemed like,
It was the time that
yeah.
And then, with Avalon around the corner now.
Oh, and Avalon, of course, yeah.
And what was
Formerly
High-Low and then became Joust, which is Joust Cafe now. So we've got good eateries. We've got Thai and we've got Puerto Rican, Caribbean, which is nice. And, all the way down, there's much, much more going on. And you guys are a very integral part of that. I mean, the thing I love about this place in conjunction with everything else is that and I think this is true for the whole business community in Catskill and the retail side, nobody steps on anybody's toes.
That was a very conscious decision.
Yeah.
There were two decisions that I thought were really important. One was a selection of items that would have appeal across very different demographic groups, age groups, socioeconomic groups. I didn't want anyone to feel excluded.
Right.
I have to say there are stores, maybe on the other side of the river, don't feel that friendly to go into.
Exactly.
Or accessible.
Right.
They can be very intimidating. I did not want that at all. And also, I wanted to kind of go around to all the other businesses and look at what they were doing and see how could we create a unique little niche for ourselves that doesn't step on other people's toes,
Right.
that just kind of stay in our own lane and do something a little different. And that's why we decided to go with kind of the farm and forest nature theme.
And what you guys have built here is a curated collection of really, really wonderful quality home goods. I mean, they're something you can't find anywhere else. I mean, I don't know. I would imagine you finding the sources for these things is a passion and a chore at the same time. But if you walk in here and just take a look around, you'll find something new and something approachable. And just as you said, it's something.
Yeah, and I wanted things that were complementary. Like I forgot to mention Catskill woodworking. You know, they have those beautiful charcuterie boards. So I make sure that I have the utensils and bowls and spreaders and things like that can go with those things.
Sure.
You know, Catskill Market has things that are more, environmentally focused, sustainable.
That's where I get my
handcrafted.
scrub brushes from.
Yeah. So once in a while, someone will come in, like a craftsman came in once with these beautiful native granite boards, like cheese boards and charcuterie boards. And I sent them to Catskill Woodworking. Yeah. I said, those will look beautiful alongside their stuff, and they do carry them now.
Yeah, well, there you go.
So when I do see things that I think really, they're beautiful, but they would actually go better in someone else's store, I'll actually send them to the other store. Kind of a la, Miracle on 34th Street. I figure, send them to another store. Doing the right thing will bring people back.
And it does.
I feel like through the podcast, that's one of the things that we keep discovering, or at least I do, about our business communities, is how supportive of one another they all are. And I feel like that's pretty unique.
It is unique.
I really admire a lot of the other business people.
It's all very friendly, which is, that I'm imagining is not always the case. In every community.
Yeah, Pim Ziegler and Katie, they do such a nice job with the retail community here, having events, creating, First Fridays and things like that.
And we're talking, Pim is the proprietor of Cydia, which was, he embraced a derogatory term that was used by
I thought
natives.
it was brilliant the first time.
That's absolutely brilliant.
It made me laugh.
People would be referred to as Cydiots especially driving around through here when I was a kid. But he grabbed a hold of that and just turned it on its head. And it's a wonderful place. He had a pivot too, because he from what I understand, he was having a meeting space or a co-working space and things like that. Built those two wonderful phone booth type things where you could go in with your notebook and have a conference call or something. They're, highly decorated, basically closets, but they're fantastic, comfortable, and, all the stuff that you need right there. I actually participated in another podcast from that place.
I was going to say, it would be great to do a podcast.
Yeah. It's the Econ Dev Show.
They've become very good friends and very supportive. I mean, it's funny. We run into each other's stores to grab things all the time. And I think that's really nice.
Yeah. When we were in Cooksaki, Sarah Gray Miller said the same sort of thing. She has this little speakeasy type bar called Ravish Liquor off the back of her Unquiet Antiques and Event place.
Yeah.
But if they're missing something or things like that, there's Reed Street Bottle Shop. Or if they go across to Patrick Henry and, swap things out and make sure there's enough for everybody to do well. That's the support.
Yeah, I think so. It's really gratifying. Right across the street now, we're seeing a new business getting ready to open. The art supply store.
It's the art supply store, right? Yeah. So that's fantastic.
I think they're going to have some of the proprietor's original artwork, some for prints, I believe. I always go over and talk everyone up to find out what's going on.
One of my oldest friends runs a design group out of Buffalo called the Win Creative Group. And he and I have been friends since I think he was 5 and I was 7. But we always used to have to get our art supplies. We also had to drive to Woodstock because there was just nothing around here. But now this is just exciting stuff.
Yeah, we used to feel that we'd always have to go to the other side of the river.
Yeah.
Or Albany.
We didn't, or Albany, right?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Okay,
we feel like we didn't have a lot of choices here. Like every time we'd have to go to somebody's house for dinner or whatever, we felt like we were going to get a gift, and then we're like, oh, we're running over there to find it.
Yeah, one of the most gratifying things is when I see someone come running in here because it's somebody's birthday and they need a birthday gift, and they know they can run over
That's true.
to Main Street and they'll find something on Main Street.
So for the past 9 years, I've been heading up the Buy-in Greene program. I think that's when we first met. Invest Greene is the business attraction leg of that, and then Buy-in Greene is about consumer engagement. And, getting more and more people listed on that and promoting that as a free service from the county to people that are downstate visitors, things like that. But we also have a fair amount of following within the county. We've got 1,100 local businesses, and there's some that are just so unique and so wonderful, and you've got that platform. We're seeing that happen in Reed Street and Coxsackie right now, where there are new businesses open. Caro's starting to see a revitalization along the way. And we like to think that the Buy-in Greene program has been...
I've got to tell you, when you introduce yourself and you first talked to us when we were Joe's Garage, the event space, we felt so supported. And then I read what you wrote about us, and I was like, wow, that Mark can really write. I used to interview a lot of writers for the work I did, to write, marketing copy and things like that. And when I read that, I was just like, that was so well done. And to have that kind of quality of writing and support up here, I didn't expect that. I really didn't.
It is, we have a great deal of support from the Greene County Legislature. They get it. They get what we're doing. And I can remember talking to some of them, they're asking me, how are we going to measure success of this program? Because I had asked for a substantial increase in budget to be able to do what we needed to do. And I said, I could give you a whole bunch of marketing speak about web clicks and social media following, but the real thing is tax revenue. Sales tax revenue, if it keeps going up, we must be doing something right. Exactly. Now, I'm saying it's the only thing. It's all on us, but it means the collective work that is being done through the economic development department is on the right way.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to mention to you, too, when you were talking about Mike sourcing all of these products, right? First of all, he gets these products from all over the place. And sometimes we find out in interesting ways that he's the sole distributor in North America. Certain things. Because people contact him and they say, they're told by the company, the wholesaler says, oh, well, High Rock Home is the only distributor in the U.S.
There's one Swedish company where I have to wire money to Sweden. They won't take a credit card.
It's really a pain to deal with some of these imports. But then we find out we're the only importers of these products.
Yeah, Bank of Greene County always looks at me like I have 5 heads when I go in and say I need money. I transfer to Sweden.
I know we need to wire money to Sweden, but that's what the diversity of what we have here and the uniqueness is because of where he sources these things. He gets, and if he sees if we get artificial flowers, he doesn't think that they're real enough. He goes to another source. So he's constantly working on upgrading, what we have here.
I have to confess, I ordered some more flowers.
You ordered more, Well, we keep each other in balance because I'm always maintaining the cash flows, and then he's spending the cash flows. But
I'm essentially a compulsive shopper.
That's why it works.
And constant shopping and curation works because I challenge anyone to come in here and not walk out with 5 things.
Well, I love it when people come in here and they're just laughing about, the chipmunks roasting marshmallows in the window. Or, the big yellow horse ottoman. I wanted it to be kind of shoppertainment for people and to really lift people's spirits.
And now that the cats are up on Main Street, I got to tell you, Michael has raised the bar significantly in the cat implementation. Not just going to paint a cat. Everybody knows about around Catskill. Catskill, every year, each business has a cat in front of them, and people come to walk up and down the street, take pictures and selfies with the cats. And then they'll all get auctioned off for a really good cause at the end of the season. Michael took it on himself to please describe the cat cafe.
Yeah, well, we were supposed to do cats that were kind of inspired by the area and the businesses in the area since they're going in front of businesses. So I thought, well, there are a lot of little restaurants and places to eat here, so maybe I'll do a cafe, a cat fe.
Cat
with and I have a lot of little mice in store. So I decided
not living mice.
Right.
We don't have an infestation.
Little ceramic ones.
Okay.
And so I thought it'd be funny to, carve the cat into an actual building and have the mice inside having lunch and coffee and, chocolates and pastries and things that we have in Catskill around here.
Yeah, and here's the other reveal is that at nighttime, the cat's eyes light up because of an ingenious solar switch that Michael has installed.
Well, that's what happens when you run over one of your solar path lights with the lawnmower.
You got to use it somewhere. Right?
Yeah, some of these decapitated solar lights.
You guys have done so much since you've been here. And, Joe, your connection to the area goes back, like we hear so many times, about, a strong connection to the area and then bringing more people, bringing your significant others, your family, starting a business here. That's a constant story that we're hearing. You've got a wonderful, vibrant business going on. You guys are a joy to have a conversation with. What are some of the challenges that you might have faced along the way?
Well, I think the biggest challenge in Catskill at the moment is just continuing to attract visitors and to have a vibrant streetscape. There are a lot of what could be storefronts that are kind of back office facilities at the moment. And I would love to see some sort of incentive to have those businesses move to other locations so that those could be used as restaurants and shops and other kinds of things that would bring people in.
Yeah. I mean, we've had challenges across the county where there was street-level housing. Well, street-level retail was turned into apartments and stuff like that. That's systematically now starting to get taken care of. There have been different programs and things like that. But
as an area becomes more vibrant, it kind of happens naturally.
It does, yeah.
Yeah, because one of the things we've noticed is if there is traffic on the street, everybody does well, right? You have to have the products that they want, but we have to have the people walking the street that come into the store. And more people are finding, which just helps with the repeat business part of it. But the street traffic is sometimes very variable. Some weekends there's very few people walking up and down the street on Main Street, but then other weekends you could do very well. So it's the variability is one of the challenges, and you can't produce customers that aren't on your street.
That's exactly it. Yeah.
So I think that's one of the challenges for us. I have to say one of the areas that's not a challenge is everybody's been, like yourself, has been very helpful. The town was extremely welcoming to us as a business, and they were so happy. Well, you saw the way the building looked, right?
Oh, yeah. Well.
So when we showed them the plans, they were so happy.
Yeah.
And the Historical Society was happy because we were keeping the original, character of the building and everything else. It's not when you pluses and minuses. I would say there's many more pluses that we had as far as being welcomed here. When we were in event business, one of the challenges we had was there wasn't enough lodging.
Right.
So people wanted to have their weddings here, but then they go, well, where can we stay? That was a problem in Catskill, right? Yeah. And we noticed that when people are in lodgings around here, they're coming into the stores, when they Airbnb and everything else. So
Downstreet, which is, Main Street Catskill for us locals, we always refer to as Downstreet. Okay. Yeah. Because that's where you went. You went down street from one of the heights. Yeah, okay. Either Catskill Heights or Grandview Heights or Jefferson Heights. So you're going down into Main Street. So where are you going? I'm going down street. That has always been kind of a destination. It's becoming much, much more of an exploration type thing. We've got some anchors that are bringing things in like Foreland, that will bring a bunch of traffic in. People will wander around and explore. We have the walking loop now, which is really a good thing. We've got Crossroads right behind you guys, so that look at the brew pub,
and the farmers market,
and the farmers market is wonderful too. Yeah, that's been fantastic. So
all of that is very much feeding on itself in a positive way.
Yeah. There's all these young families that are there, and they're not just there to buy stuff; they're there to have fellowship with each other. Yeah. And of course, you got Willa's down there as well, which is just a neat place to explore.
Yeah, I think for people that have lived here for a longer period of time, that kind of grew up here, I think like a lot of us, you just kind of get into your pattern. I think a lot of those people haven't discovered Main Street Catskill yet because they just don't. They stopped coming to Main Street Catskill.
They go to Kingston or they go to Albany.
Yeah. So once in a while, I'll get some of those. Oh, I've lived here for X number of years, and I had no idea all of this was here. So that's kind of a challenge, I guess, is how do you reach those people?
Actually, Mike brings up a good point. It seems like it's more the local people don't know that this is here than the weekenders who are coming up and looking for things to do. And that, so the weekenders find us more than local people. And when local people come in, they're like, oh, I haven't been on Main Street in like years.
I still have this feeling, oh my gosh, there's no place to park down on Main Street. I'm not going to go down there. I'll go over
there's plenty of
parking.
Or people ask, well, how long have you been here? As if we were just open.
Yeah.
And we say, well, we have 2.5 years.
Yeah. That's it. So any plans for the future aside from just maintaining and living life? And Joe, I know you have a hobby with classic cars, and you guys have horses up at High Rock. And
oh, yes. And Mike spends much more time here than I do.
Mm-hmm.
Joe's usually at some sort of piece of equipment knocking things over.
I have an excavator, a skid steer, multiple tractors, and I'm always doing stuff on our property because with 117 acres.
Yeah, there's always something to do.
There's always a tree that fell over that has to be picked up.
Trees endlessly. There's trees that have to be cleaned up and everything else. So
he's a little obsessed with routing water.
Yeah, and I love routing little swells and things like that.
Awesome.
My stepfather does the same thing. At my mom and his house, he is always rerouting there. They have a pond and a natural creek. And he's making bridges and all
and every time it rains, you go running out and you're excited because you want to see which way the water's running. Is it running the way you thought it was going to run? You fixed it. So I'm enjoying all of that. So I'm a little bit more in retired mode than Mike.
Yeah, and having been a designer, I once in a while I'll fall in love with something that I find, and then all of a sudden they stop making it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I start thinking, well, maybe I should just make it.
There you go.
So I would love to have the time to be able to do that, to make some unique items here as well that fit in with our theme here. For some reason, I can't seem to get my hands on very easily.
Yeah. So for our listeners, if you have not been to High Rock Home, it is in the Joe's Garage building, right at the head of Main Street, right next to the town office building. If you're wandering around Catskill looking at cats, you guys are open Fridays through Sundays, is that it?
Yes.
Okay, so Fridays through Sundays the best time to have a look inside. You can always look through the windows, which are incredibly merchandised. Michael's design eye is absolutely incredible. But thank you guys so much for taking the time to talk with us. We really, really appreciate it. Wanted to make sure that we're heading around to all the different communities and when we talked about Catskill, you guys were the ones that came.
We appreciate that so much.
Yes. Well, that's a wrap on another fantastic episode of the Best Kept Secrets of Greene County, New York podcast. Next time, we'll be letting the Catskills out of the bag in Windham, New York, when we're talking to WRIP about local radio. But until then, we have places to go, things to do, stories to tell.